After Freddy Krueger's glove pulled Jason's mask down at the end of Jason Goes to Hell, audiences were desperate to see the two horror icons clash on the big screen. But ultimately, Freddy vs. Jason would go into development hell and would not be released until 10 years later in 2003. So with the film potentially not moving forward, producer Sean S. Cunningham decided to make another Friday the 13th film to retain the audience's interest in the character. And with multiple other franchises having already gone to space, it was decided to send Jason to space in what would be one of the most divided and bizarre entries in the iconic horror franchise. Greetings all you movie junkies and entertainment lovers, and welcome to another review. Today we're going to be talking about Jason X. The movie begins in the far future of 2008, where Jason Voorhees has been captured and held at the Crystal Lake Research Facility. After having numerous failed attempts to be killed, Jason then breaks free of his restraints and murders several soldiers before being lured into a cryogenic pod by a scientist who gets trapped in the sealed room as they are both cryogenically frozen inside. Then, in the year 2455, after the planet is no longer inhabitable, a field trip to Earth finds the frozen Jason and brings him aboard their ship, believing him to be dead until he awakens and begins killing all those aboard. The film was made in 2000, but ultimately wouldn't get a proper theatrical release until 2002, just 1 year before Freddy vs. Jason, and was not very well received, nor did it do very well at the box office. Now, why they couldn't have just used this film as a big marketing ploy for Freddy vs. Jason, which was in production at that point, I don't know. Something like, come see Jason X and get a 5-minute sneak peek at Freddy vs. Jason. And I think a big part of why this film was very dismissed among its initial release was because people had been waiting for Freddy vs. Jason. So Jason in space was the last thing people wanted to see at that point. So had it been released sometime after Freddy vs. Jason, I think it actually would have fared a little better. Over time, Jason X has been heavily reevaluated, with many fans enjoying it for what it is, as a cheesy sci-fi horror movie which it's very intentionally supposed to be. I would even go as far as to say that it's not even really supposed to be a Friday the 13th movie at all, but rather a sci-fi monster movie where the monster in this case happens to be Jason Voorhees. Which is also, I think, the best way to view the movie as a whole. And the plot is practically the exact same as Alien, which was very intentional. And there's a lot of other traditional and cliche sci-fi elements thrown in there, with Jason killing the same two characters twice, once in virtual reality and once in real life. Now, how exactly Jason was able to enter the virtual reality is anyone's guess, but who cares, it's a neat idea anyway. And it's later used to transport Jason to a Crystal Lake setting where we get a redo of the classic sleeping bag kill from part 7. And then of course we have an android character who successfully kills Jason, only for him to be then revived by nanotechnology, transforming him into Uber Jason, which is both the most ridiculous and yet coolest design of Jason in the franchise. Needless to say, the movie is very silly, but again, it was intentionally made to be that way, as the filmmakers knew that the concept itself was silly to begin with, so instead of trying to make a serious, grounded version of that, they decided to have fun with it. And anyone going into a movie called Jason X expecting it to be a serious and grounded horror movie is already doing a disservice to themselves right off the bat. Now, I know not everyone is going to be into the kind of movie that this is, but at the same time, I don't think you can really heavily criticize something for successfully being exactly what it intended to be. Which is why I believe much of the hate this film has received over the years has largely been unfounded. And many critique it heavily for the characters being very one-dimensional, but so are most of the characters in the franchise. The one thing that perhaps merits it a little bit from the other films is the slightly lower grade visual effects, but honestly it's pretty much what I would expect a lower budget horror film from the early 2000s to look like anyway, and I've seen much worse in more recent bigger budgeted films. Now, just because Jason X succeeded at being the kind of movie that it is make it a classic? No, of course not. But I do very much believe that it hasn't deserved the hate it's gotten over the years, and I'm glad to see it be somewhat reevaluated and enjoyed in more recent years, as not necessarily a Friday the 13th movie, but rather as a fun sci-fi monster movie starring Jason Voorhees. Thanks for watching this review. Be sure to subscribe for more videos, and until next time, be sure to consume as much entertainment as humanly possible, and I'll see you in the next video.